The SM-6 interceptor leaves the vertical launch cell and climbs aggressively into the open sky at a staggering speed of 2,400 miles per hour, just seconds after launch. A proximity fuse triggers, and a devastating cloud of tungsten shrapnel expands outward in every direction, shredding a fiberglass target, sitting 3 meters away from the point of detonation. But the celebration that erupts inside the Combat Information Center lasts exactly 1 second, because when the crew looks back at the radar screen, it is not clearing the way they hoped. Instead, it is filling up rapidly and relentlessly with dozens, and then hundreds of new incoming contacts. One successful intercept means absolutely nothing when there are 999 more threats still screaming across the open water, directly toward the fleet. The Iranian forces have made a very deliberate and calculated decision to lead this attack with their cheapest and most expendable technology. 1,000 small, unmanned drones, each one costing less than $20,000, are now screaming low across the surface of the water, headed straight for the most powerful and technologically advanced naval fleet ever assembled in human history. Individually, each one of these drones is a complete joke, a simple piece of off-the-shelf hardware that a competent engineer could swat out of the sky without breaking a sweat. But together, operating as one massive and perfectly coordinated swarm, these drones form a physical wall of noise, confusion, and electronic static that is specifically and brilliantly designed to overwhelm and blind the most sophisticated combat fleet on the face of the entire Earth. The Aegis combat system aboard the lead destroyer is simultaneously tracking hundreds upon hundreds of incoming targets. Its incredibly powerful onboard processors are running at absolute maximum capacity, struggling desperately to keep pace with the sheer number and variety of threats now flooding every screen in the operations center. But the horizon is still completely dark and crowded with more incoming shapes that keep coming and coming without any sign of stopping. Then comes the moment that the entire crew has been dreading. A single small drone no bigger than a kitchen table manages to slip undetected through the defensive perimeter, and it slams with tremendous force directly and violently into the Spy 1 radar array mounted high on the bridge structure of the lead destroyer. The physical impact itself appears relatively minor at first, just a loud pop of fire and a twisted, tangled wreckage of melted plastic and scorched metal. But the ship's entire primary radar face is now cracked, and the system begins going offline. The billion-dollar warship is suddenly operating at half capacity, completely half-blind in the middle of what has just become an active and extremely dangerous kill zone. As the destroyer reels from the blow and its crew scrambles frantically to assess the full extent of the damage from the radar strike, something else entirely and far more dangerous is happening in the dark, cold water far below the surface. Underneath the noisy chaos of the drone swarm, Iran has quietly and secretly deployed Ghadir-class mini-submarines. These small and nearly undetectable vessels have been sitting completely motionless and silent on the sandy floor of the Persian Gulf for several weeks, patiently and precisely waiting for the American carrier group to cross a very specific pre-programmed GPS coordinate line. A high-pitched and unmistakable whine suddenly fills the sonar headsets of the American crew. Torpedo in the water. The destroyer crew immediately fires its Mark 54 lightweight torpedoes into the murky and churning water below. One Iranian mini-submarine is cracked open like an egg, its thin hull violently and catastrophically imploding under the enormous crushing pressure generated by the underwater explosion. But the second submarine had already completed its mission and released its deadly payload. 2 full-sized heavyweight torpedoes are now streaking silently through the dark water, directly toward the carrier group. Escorts at a speed of 50 miles per hour. The commander of the destroyer does not have the luxury of waiting for a perfect and clean targeting solution, so the order is immediately given to launch a spread of Nulka-active decoys into the air above the water. These clever small rockets hover above the surface, electronically mimicking with perfect accuracy the massive radar signature and acoustic profile of a full-sized warship. The incoming torpedoes are completely confused and disoriented by the false signals. One torpedo veers completely off its original course and detonates harmlessly and uselessly against a completely empty patch of open ocean. The second torpedo is struck cleanly mid-run by a precisely aimed anti-torpedo defense system, a kinetic slug traveling at extraordinary speed that hits the incoming warhead directly and destroys it completely before it ever gets close to its intended target. We are trading high-technology precision-guided systems for low-technology mass-produced violence manufactured on an industrial scale, and the enemy knows exactly what they are doing. They are entirely rational and calculating in their overall approach. They understand with absolute certainty that they cannot win a direct technological competition against the United States military. So, instead of trying to match us technology for technology, they are deliberately trying to outspend us through sheer weight of numbers and blood, and lead the carrier group does not slow down, and does not turn and run. Instead, the enormous turbine engines of the USS Gerald are forward surge to their maximum output, and the carrier, along with every one of its escorts, steams directly and intentionally toward the Iranian coast. To the Iranian commanders, watching their tactical displays in real time, this appears to look exactly like a suicidal charge, directly into a carefully prepared and inescapable trap. They observe the carrier crossing into the narrowest and most treacherous section of the strait, where the water depth is dangerously shallow, and the entire length of shoreline has been lined with carefully concealed shore batteries and long-range missile launchers deep beneath the ancient and massive Zagros Mountains. The ground itself begins to shake and move. Enormous hydraulic lifting systems groan under the tremendous weight of solid iron and steel. These are the legendary missile cities, a vast and extraordinarily complex network of tunnels, passages, and underground chambers carved many miles deep into solid living rock, designed to house 4,000 ballistic missiles in ready-to-fire condition. The Fate 110 represents the primary workhorse of this massive underground arsenal. It is a solid propellant missile fully capable of striking any target with the surgical precision of a scalpel at a range of up to 180 miles. The overall Iranian military doctrine here is brutally simple. It is a strategy called saturation dominance. The entire plan is to convert the Persian Gulf into an inescapable graveyard filled with sinking American warships. They are waiting with absolute patience for the carrier group to enter the dead zone, the precisely calculated and mathematically confirmed point of no return beyond which their shore-based missile batteries have a 100% certainty of scoring a direct hit on any vessel. The clock has now become the second most dangerous enemy facing the Americans under the provisions of the War Powers Act. The countdown stands at day 59, 23 hours and 45 minutes. The Iranians have studied American domestic law more carefully and thoroughly than most ordinary American citizens ever bother to, and they have determined that in just 15 minutes the U.S. military will be legally compelled to cease all offensive combat operations. They are already recording triumphant victory broadcasts in Tehran, fully convinced they have won the entire political dimension of this conflict without needing to fire a single one of their heavy missiles. But they have made one catastrophic and irreversible mistake. They have not yet heard the B-1B Lancer high above the cloud layer, operating far beyond the maximum range of any Iranian air defense system. The massive heavy bomber silently opens its internal weapons bay. It carries no conventional gravity bombs. It carries the Dark Eagle. The Dark Eagle is a cutting-edge long-range hypersonic strike weapon that travels at speeds exceeding 3,800 miles per hour, making it dramatically faster than any rifle bullet ever manufactured. Conventional radar systems are completely unable to detect or track it in flight because the intensely superheated plasma envelope surrounding the missile absorbs all incoming radar waves before they can bounce back, and even if some future radar system could somehow detect it, no interceptor missile currently in existence anywhere on the planet has the speed or agility to pursue and destroy it. The blinded destroyer, the one that absorbed the drone hit and lost its primary radar, suddenly begins broadcasting a powerful and completely unencrypted electronic signal out across the open frequencies. The Iranian targeting teams take the bait immediately. They activate their primary targeting radars and begin locking onto the wounded and apparently vulnerable ship with the clear intention of finishing it off. But this is the second and most devastating twist in the entire operation, because the blinded ship is not what it appears to be. It is a ghost. It is an empty remote-controlled decoy vessel. The actual crew was quietly evacuated many hours before the battle even began. When the Iranian operators switch on their radars to destroy it, they are unknowingly revealing the precise GPS coordinates of the air ventilation shafts, the geological stress fractures, and the structural hinge points of their deeply buried underground missile cities. The American sensors aboard the F-35C Lightning II stealth aircraft orbiting silently high above capture and record every single electronic emission. They map the entire mountain range beneath them. They identify every weak point in the granite where natural cracking has occurred. They locate all of the air intake shafts that supply breathable oxygen to the 4,000 military personnel living in the tunnels below. The Iranians have just handed over the complete keys to their own front door. The Dark Eagle missiles are released. They do not target the massive reinforced bunker entrance doors because those are constructed from reinforced steel 20 feet thick backed by dense concrete. Instead, the hypersonic missiles aim precisely for the natural mountain peaks directly above the underground facilities. The air screams as the Dark Eagle re-enters the lower atmosphere at a nearly vertical angle. It is a controlled plunge at 5 times the speed of sound. 6 Dark Eagle missiles arrive and impact simultaneously. The raw physical force is equivalent to a runaway freight train slamming into a solid brick wall, except in this case the wall is 500 feet of ancient solid granite. The mountain literally collapses downward into itself. 500,000 tons of shattered rock cascade down the slopes in a massive choking cloud of dust. The exits from every bunker below are instantly and permanently buried under an immovable wall of rubble. The 4,000 ballistic missiles stored inside remain sitting perfectly intact on their launch rails, but they are now sealed behind 200 feet of compressed broken earth. The missile cities have, in a single moment, been transformed into missile tombs. The Iranian commanders stare helplessly at their monitors as every camera feed simultaneously goes completely black. They are not dead, but they are now completely irrelevant, trapped deep inside a mountain with no way out and no way to fire their weapons. But as the dust begins to settle, a completely new alarm screams throughout the carrier's command center. A hidden access hatch that was never identified or mapped is sliding open along the coastline near Bandar Abbas. A Shahab 3 medium-range ballistic missile is now rising from its concealed launch position, its nose cone painted with distinctive orange stripes marking it as a high-value and potentially non-conventional payload. This represents the Iranian regime's absolute last desperate attempt to salvage something from this catastrophic defeat. The B-1B Lancer is no longer in position to respond. The destroyers are still committed to dealing with the remnants of the drone swarm. The Shahab 3 continues to accelerate, heading on a direct ballistic trajectory for the USS Gerald R. Ford. If this missile reaches its peak altitude and begins its terminal descent, it will become nearly impossible to intercept, and its impact would carry the destructive force of a falling asteroid from the deck of the carrier. 2 F-35C Lightning II stealth fighters are catapulted into the air at maximum speed. Their internal weapons bays open to reveal the AIM-120 Advanced Medium-Range Air-to-Air Missile. What follows is a boost phase intercept, the single most technically demanding maneuver in all of aerial warfare. The pilots must strike a rising ballistic rocket while it is still in its relatively slow early ascent. Before it escapes into the upper atmosphere, they lock precisely onto the intense heat signature pouring from the Shahab 3 engine. The missile leaves the rail and streaks upward, cutting through the thick yellow exhaust smoke. It strikes the rocket's main fuel tank at the precise moment the missile clears 30,000 feet. A massive secondary explosion tears through the sky as tons of liquid propellant ignite simultaneously. The final desperate gambit becomes nothing more than a rain of burning aluminum falling harmlessly into the sea. The immediate threat is neutralized, but the Iranians have one final card remaining. A massive swarm of Zulfiqar fast attack boats emerges from concealed sea caves cut into the rocky coastline. These are the mosquitoes of the Gulf, each one 40 feet long, capable of 70 miles per hour, and armed with Kausar anti-ship missiles. They move in unpredictable zigzag patterns, making it impossible for the destroyer's main guns to track them. They are closing fast. 5 miles, 4 miles, now inside the minimum effective range of the heavy missiles from the carrier's hangar deck. 4 MH-60 are Seahawk helicopters, lift-off armed with AGM-114 Hellfire missiles, flying extremely low, using the spray of the ocean waves to mask their signatures. The Hellfire leaves the rail with a quiet whoosh and strikes the lead boat directly in the engine compartment. The boat disintegrates at 70 miles per hour, its crew and missiles vanishing in a spray of salt and fire. The Seahawks work methodically through the entire swarm. In 4 minutes, 16 boats are reduced to burning wreckage. The mosquitoes are permanently swatted. The surface threat is finished, but the mission is still not complete, because the threat is never just the weapons, it is always the economic system that funds and sustains them. The B-1B Lancer fleet releases its second strike wave, carrying the AGM-158 Joint Strike Missile. The stealth cruise missiles skim the wave tops at 550 miles per hour, flying so close to the surface they are completely invisible to shoreline defense radars. The target is Karg Island, the absolute heart of the entire Iranian oil export industry, through which 80% of all national revenue flows. The strike eliminates the pump stations and destroys every bridge connecting the island to the mainland in exactly 120 seconds. The economic lifeblood of the regime is permanently severed. They have no missiles left to fire, and now no money to buy replacements. Every light along the Iranian coastline suddenly goes dark. The MELDJ miniature air-launched decoy jammer has been orbiting Tehran Air Defense Headquarters for over an hour, mimicking the electronic signatures of entire wings of heavy bombers. The panicked Iranian operators wasted their entire S-400 missile inventory shooting at electronic ghosts. Now the MELDJ switches to full jammer mode, flooding the spectrum with gigawatts of electronic noise, frying the delicate circuits throughout the entire Iranian command network. The whole military is instantly deaf-dumb and blind a low-flying black-painted MH-60M Black Hawk hovers silently above the perimeter of the Bushehr Nuclear Facility Special Operations. Teams trained for 6 months on a full-scale replica. The Nevada desert move, and swiftly they bypass the guard staring at dead screens. The goal is not destruction, but seizure. The team locates the enriched uranium storage containers, and as the first light of dawn touches the Persian Gulf, the final lead line container clicks shut in the hold of the departing helicopter. The nuclear shield is gone, the strait is open, and the Dark Eagle accomplished all of it without a single gram of explosive.